Arm bar. One second. How much money is Zoom making right now? Zoom is doing well, right?
And they're doing really well.
Dang, that must be awesome.
Had quite a few meetings this week with parents and everything else with Zoom and Hangouts and everything. So
Yeah, somebody needs to come up with a tool that just one tool streams to everything. You know?
yeah.
That'd be cool. All right. We'll just wait for like a minute or two and then we'll get started. I'm just showing slides today with some animated, like small video clips, nothing big. Boom. 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 Keep the YouTube chat going just in case.
Coach Tim, tell everyone about your shirt that you're wearing today since you didn't do a shirt video for Instagram.
Garbage. This is Gary Grosky. It's like a Garbage Pail Kid. Remember Garbage Pail Kids? These are awesome. He's dirty. He has boogers. His gi's ripped. He's got warts or something. Basically your standard jiu-jitsu guy. Hey, Lily, how are you?
Staff in there.
Yeah, a little staff, little coronavirus.
Say hi. No.
All right. So there's a couple folks, I guess, are on YouTube. If you have questions, type them here. Hooray. All right, cool. All right, there's Jesse and Rocky. Looks like we're getting everybody in. All right, cool. All right. So I got to figure out how to share my screen here.
What's up?
Hey, man. Hold on. I got to give Zoom access. Come on. One sec. Apple's giving me the business here. All right. Share screen. Firefox. Okay, cool. So you guys can see my screen, yeah?
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, I like your background, Lily. That's pretty rad. I feel like I should do something like that, but I got to have the perfect background. Okay, here we go. Let's get started. I'm going to go full screen on the presenter, but if like it tweaks out, I apologize. Just let me know and we'll pick up. Does everybody see the slide deck come up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to pull up the YouTube feed on my laptop just in case anybody has a question. I can answer it over there. There's a couple people on, maybe. It's hard. Sometimes it's kind of hard to tell who's actually on the YouTube feed. Because I don't know. Anyway, okay, awesome. Here we go. Let's get started. Okay, so today we're going to talk about if I was to ask you, like, what's the most versatile submission? in jiu-jitsu across all grappling genres. And everyone knows we're talking about arm bars because I already gave the big reveal away. But I mean, you know, a lot of times we jump to like rear naked choke, which I think is probably like, if you could only learn one submission, if I said like there's only one submission you could ever learn, probably rear naked choke would be the submission, right? That would be like, dude, because it's so versatile in the sense that not as versatile as the arm bar, but it's very, very, very well suited for jiu-jitsu, MMA, and self-defense. And the nice thing about the rear naked choke is that you can put somebody to sleep with it. Whereas an arm bar in a self-defense situation, if somebody's all hopped up or kind of out of it, you could break their arm and they could keep fighting, right? But if you put somebody to sleep, like there's not going to be any more fighting. The fight's going to be over. But if we're just looking at grappling and grappling genres, I want to put it out there that we should consider the arm bar is one of the top submissions to get. All right. And so I'm going to talk about why I feel that way. And then the hope when we're done is that you'll have a renewed love for breaking people's arms when we're done, right? You'll be like, yes, I want to get some arm bars. And then you'll have a better understanding of the types of arm bars that exist and a better understanding of how the arm bar works. Once you kind of mentally get what's going on with the mechanism of the arm lock, it becomes easier to tighten it up. The problem that a lot of times we have with the arm bar is that they're very loose. There's a few connection points that have to be tight. And if you don't kind of have that tightness or that location just right, the technique just doesn't work. And one kind of big example of that is like the classic arm bar where you got their arm and you're laying back and you're trying to get it. Well, if you let that person's elbow joint slip below your hip line, you could pull on this part of the arm all you want and you're not going to get the arm bar. It's not going to work, right? So there's some things in there that they have to be set a certain way. But once you kind of understand where those points are, it should help you get a better finish. And I also think that when you look at armbar versus rear naked chokes, one of the reasons why you will see when we look at some of the numbers, it's not comprehensive, it's just some numbers. The rear naked choke, I think, has a higher finish rate because it's harder to escape. Right. The armbar submission in and of itself is a little easier to get out of versus a rear naked choke where somebody's behind you. They have hooks in, they have a backpack, like they have a full pin on you essentially from the back. Right. And then now they're going to work in to get the arms versus the armbar. It's like it happens in all kinds of positions. And sometimes all you have to do is this much is rotate your arm and you can escape out of it. So the finish rates might be a little lower for the armbar. But the opportunities of like where they present, I would think, this is anecdotal, but I would think that it's way more accessible than the rear naked choke. All right. So when we're done with this, hopefully you guys are like really hopped up on arm bars when we get back, or you could just arm bar your kids. And then, that you understand the types of arm bars and how they work. All right. So let's jump into it. Armbar, Juji Gatami, right? This is like one of the classic submissions. It comes over from judo, or when judo and jiu-jitsu were kind of one already. The armbar was really big, all right, in that game. So we're going to talk about the armbar. Okay, yeah, you got all this crap. Okay, so here we go. Why do I say that the armbar is the most versatile? Well, look, it's super prolific, it's super accessible, and it's super adaptable, all right? So prolific means this. The armbar shows up. You can get it from closed guard. You can get it from open guard. All the open guard variations, right? Almost all of them. There's some entry into an armbar of some sort. Closed guard, it shows up. You can get the armbar from all of the pin positions of the upper body, all right? So mount, side control, knee on belly, back control. And if you have somebody and they're turtled, you can armbar it from there. So all those like high level, like those 6, basic upper body pin positions expose the armbar to you. The ashi is a leg pin, not so much. What's crazy about the armbar is, let's say you don't have the dominant aspect of the pin. Let's say you're the one being pinned. You're under side control, you're under knee on belly, you're in back control. you are turtled up, you can still get arm bars from those positions, right? So it's just, if arm bar was something that you planted outside in your yard, it would be like a weed. It would be impossible to stop from growing. It's prolific. It shows up everywhere. All right. The other thing that kind of makes it super versatile is that it's accessible in the sense that there's arm bars you could do with just your arms, your upper body. There's arm bars you could do with just your legs, your lower body, and then there's combinations where you use your arms and your legs in conjunction with each other. So it shows up in a lot of spots, and then you could do it in lots of different ways. All right. You could do it with just your arms, just your legs, or a combination of both. And it's adaptable in that there's like straight arm locks that function in a certain way. There's pressing arm locks that function a certain way. And there's kind of like, I just call them classic arm bars because that's the one we really think of when we think of the arm bar. So when you start stacking these three kind of, high level reasons up, you can see that the arm bar is something that presents itself all the time in a multitude of positions and opportunities. It can be applied with multiple parts of your body, and there's multiple ways you can actually apply it. So it just adds to this abundance for this submission. And one of the frustrating things about jiu-jitsu is not being able to submit people. It's like passing guard or getting in positions and not being able to do anything. And my hope is that like you can kind of start to open your eyes a little bit to all the different possibilities where the armbar shows up, and eventually start getting a higher success rate with these. All right. So the data that I found, which is a little tricky for jiu-jitsu data, but there are some people in groups that are starting to collect data and statistics on jiu-jitsu. So we're going to look at ADC submissions, right? This is collected from 2011 to 2015. And you can see that the RNC is the king of the hill by a couple percentage points. Shows up a little bit more, right? But then right underneath that, you have your arm bars, right? A couple percentage points behind. And then you have some heel hooks, which are more geared towards the no-gi. ADCC makes sense. It's a no-gi tournament. And you have, a little bit lower guillotines and triangles. The interesting thing is if you kind of look at this breakdown, it's pretty similar across grappling tournaments, all right? So if we look at US grappling, this is
Then was the slide supposed to change? Because I still have the first slide.
Yeah, I just changed it. Did it catch up yet?
No, I got nothing.
How about, let's see. Let's reset it. What about now?
My slide hasn't changed either.
Okay, I'm gonna go fix it. Hold on. Let me take it off. How about now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, holler if it does that again. I apologize. So US grappling, they scanned all their brackets from all their point tournaments in 2015. And US grappling is a East Coast grappling organization. And you can see the armbar was by far like their highest submission that they captured in their events. And right next to rear naked chokes, right next to triangles, guillotines, they're all kind of cluster up by each other. Armbar is generally pretty high up on the list. Let's jump to the next slide. Did the next slide come up okay?
Not yet.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I noticed these two particular ones are having trouble. Let me jump out of presentation mode.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, it seems like I got to jump out of that mode. Okay. So this is from the 2017 Band Jiu-Jitsu tournament. This was put together by BJJ Heroes. If you haven't seen BJJ Heroes, the guy that runs it, his name is Andre. He's a pretty cool dude, and it started really small where he would just like create profiles about different black belt athletes and like do little things on them. And then eventually he started collecting data and doing all kinds of stuff. So if you look at Pan Jiu-Jitsu from 2017, you see the armbar slides in at number 2, right, on the list, which is not too bad. Again, it's slightly behind the choke from the back, which is the highest level one here, the one that's happening the most. It's slightly behind it, okay? So you can see from the data that the armbar is always hanging out towards the top. And the reason why I feel like it's more versatile for us is because it's more accessible. In order to choke somebody with a rear naked choke, there's a lot of good things you have to do to get there first. You have to be able to put someone on their back, or you have to be able to take their back. You have to secure that position, maintain that position, and then get the choke. All right. So that can be a tall order depending on your skill level. Whereas an arm bar, you could get it if somebody puts you in a bad position and they're not paying attention, you could snap an arm bar on them. It doesn't require you to, like, the requirements for getting an arm bar, the bar is much lower. You don't have to pass guard. You don't have to get a pin position. You can, but you don't have to. All right. So the different kinds of arm bars, the types of arm bars that we're going to be looking at today, there's a bunch of them, right? And I'm going to show you some pictures of them that I've captured. And then we're going to eventually, once we kind of see the different kinds that exist, we're going to start jumping in a little bit into why they work. All right. And how they work, kind of break that down just a little bit. And it's real simple stuff. This is not rocket science stuff. We draw arrows and diagrams to make it a little more entertaining, but it's really not that far out there. But if you think about it, well, I'll get back to it. All right. So we got classic armbar from guard. Did that slide come up? Okay. These ones have been okay.
Not yet. Not yet.
Full screen's blipping out on me. I think I'm going to just do like not full screen.
There it is.
Yeah. It's kind of weird, huh?
It's just lagging really bad.
Okay. Can you guys see it okay in this view?
Yeah.
Okay. So armbar from guard, pretty straightforward, right? When you see the player's on his back, got some positioning on him, and he's applying the armbar. We got arm bars from mount, right? Which I'm assuming these are coming up okay right now.
Yeah, they're good.
Okay, good. We got the armbar from mount, which again is it's an armbar where the finish is pretty similar to this finish, but the entry point is up on the top from the mount instead of the guard. We have arm bars from side control. These clipped photos are kind of crappy, but it was the best I could do for this one. Again, you see the finish is very similar to this finish, with the exception that instead of the opponent being on the knees, they're on their back, right? And the mechanics are very similar. But again, you could hit it from side control. You have so those are kind of like your classic armbar configurations where your legs are kind of straddling the load. Your arms are pinning your partner's arm to the chest and the hips are applying pressure. This one is similar, but it's inverted in that instead of you being on your back, you're actually posting up on your head or your shoulder, but you're still applying the same arm lock. Okay. So you have inverted arm bars as opposed to your regular ones. And then we get into things a little more exotic that get a little harder to identify, like your straight arm lock. When you look at a straight arm lock, at first glance, it's easy to look at it and go, oh, that's a Kimura or a key lock, right? Because it kind of looks like a key lock. It kind of looks like a Kimura. Ooh. But it's not. If you on closer look, if you really take a look at what's going on, the pressure that's being applied is on the elbow joint and not the shoulder here. So this is an example of a straight arm lock. This is when you have top side. What's really cool about these types of techniques, another way you could get it is if somebody is on your back. So here, this dude on the bat is on this other guy's back, and you can see the guy that has his back taken is applying the straight arm lock as a submission attempt while somebody's on his back, which this is one of my favorite arm locks of all time. The psychology of submitting somebody when they have you in a dominant position is for me is like one of the best feelings in jiu-jitsu. All right. So you can see the armbar shows up in lots of different places. Example of a pressing armbar. Looks a little bit different. But again, functionally what's happening is tremendous pressure is being applied to the joint. We're trying to make the joint bend in a direction it's not supposed to go into. Different configuration, same result. And then just to kind of throw something out there that maybe is a little exotic is you have like crucifix arm bars, right? Similar style. These are applied almost solely with the legs, but again, it's a braking mechanism on the arm. So what you're starting to pick up on, just anecdotally, like looking at these images, is you start to see just a variety of ways the armbar can be applied, a variety of positions it shows up in different ways you can actually do the armbar, which is pretty neat. Now, the problem is like when you're just looking at it, there's a lot of things that are going on that if it's not broken down to you, it's it's easy to get the wrong idea or not understand actually how the armbar works. And it's funny, one of the things you see people do, like especially with kids when they're starting to learn it, is they'll often, like, say they're on their back and they're going to armbar from guard. Instead of armbarring the correct arm, sometimes they'll actually grab the wrong arm, right? As if you're going to omoplata, if you can kind of conceptually see that. And they start pulling on the arm, trying to bend the arm in a direction where it bends naturally, right? Instead of trying to bend it this way where there's no natural bend, kids will pull it the opposite way because they understand kind of what the position looks like, but at a deeper level, they don't really understand how it's working. So it's easy to, like, and you see this with new people too, adults too, where they'll grab the arm and they'll bend it at an angle this way or this way. And there's a lot of variance in there, and you can't cause a break on the joint. There's not enough pressure. It's not applied right. And people will just kind of sit there the whole time. And they look at you like, hey, I have the arm bar. It's not working. It's like, well, you have the idea of the arm bar and the position of the arm bar, but you don't have every move has like negotiable points that you can negotiate on, and then some non-negotiable points. Like there's certain things about techniques that are like, you have to do A, B, and C. Now the rest of it, it's negotiable. You can put your arm here, put your leg here, do this, do that, whatever, but you got to get these 3 things right. The arm bar has some things like that. You got to get a couple certain things exactly right, or the technique just doesn't work. All right. So if you don't understand how it works, it's really easy to get those things wrong. All right. So let's jump in a little bit with how it works. And this is where we get into this discussion about levers. And this was really fun to dig into and read about, because there's different classes of levers, and I know that, and there's simple machines. There's different types of simple machines. The problem is arm bars often get miscategorized as first class levers. And the example we use is like a teeter-totter, where there's a wedge or a fulcrum in the middle, and then there's some kind of lever and there's weight on both sides, and it's like this. And we say, hey, that's the arm bar. You're applying weight on one side, you have the fulcrums in the middle, that's your hip, and you're pulling force, but you're not. It actually is not working that way. The arm bar is a third class lever. The fulcrum and the force and the load are actually on different points, right? And I want to show you what that looks like. So if I showed you a drawing or a diagram of a third class lever, you would see this pivot is just another word for fulcrum. But you would see the pivot when we apply this to a human body. I'm going to apply this to a fishing pole, and then I'm going to overlay a body in here being arm barred, and it should help a little bit make sense. So a third class lever is a lot like a fishing pole, all right, where the effort that's being applied or the force that's being applied is kind of in the middle of that lever. That's why a fishing pole, when you start to like lift it up and raise it, you're securing it at that pivot point with your hands, but the pressure on that pole is where that pole bends, right? Because it's attached to a load somewhere, all right? The arm bar is very similar. It's very much the same kind of technique. So let's look at the pole here. This would be the fulcrum of the pole, or where the person's holding the pole. This would be the load, or where the sad fish is down here. Big fish about to die and feed a bunch of people. It's going to be a feast. And then the effort, or the kind of the pressure that's being forced onto that pole, is in the middle here, is in this area. And if we apply it to a person, it makes even more sense when we start to look at it, where if we look at this, and this, I'm so dumb. When I was first looking at this, I thought this was a real picture. Then I realized this is from a video game. Like somebody actually took a screenshot of an arm bar in a video game, but it's pretty damn good. So I used it, and I was using it, looking at it, like after practicing and kind of going and looking, I'm like, this is a video game. It's not even real people. But if we look here, if we just take this little triangle fulcrum, let me bring this to the front. And then let me change its transparency. That's a little better. You guys should be able to see that okay. So now if you look at it, you can see the fulcrum here is actually the attachment on the hands. This is where your partner's body is attached. You're not putting pressure with the arms. Like you do it to open the arm up, but once the arm gets opened up, you're securing it to your chest. The effort, the drive, the thrust is coming from the hip. All right. So if we align that hip arrow, it's coming from your hip and you're applying it to the joint, right? So where your hip pressure aligns up, it's really important. If it's below the elbow joint on the wrist side, you're not going to break this bone structure, right? You're not going to threaten the integrity of the arm. But if you could get that effort below the elbow or up on top of the elbow joint near the shoulder, on the shoulder side of the arm, or right on the elbow, you can apply lots of pressure. The load is your partner's body, right? So their arm is attached to their body. So it's like if I could somehow take Jesse and like use Jesse's arm to lift his whole body up. That's the general idea, except we're securing that load with our legs. We're strapping our two legs over it. Why? Because if in this example here, if this dude on bottom, and we talk about this all the time with the arm bar, if his leg that's covering the head wasn't covering the head, if it was just opened up and the head was free, this guy on bottom would sit right up. It would work just like pulling a fish out of the water. Boom, it would come with it. But imagine if you were pulling the fish, but somebody was underwater and they were holding the fish, and the harder you pulled, all it did was put pressure on that pole. So this lever is the arm, the pole is the arm, and we're strapping this dude down with our legs, keeping them nice and tight as we apply that upward effort against the elbow joint. The elbow joint's not that strong. I think it's like 6 pounds of pressure or 9 pounds. It's not very, it doesn't require that much pressure to break it, right? So this is a real high level overview of how that works. And if we take this same example and we start looking at the other arm bars, you could apply this same overlay and it starts to open up and make sense. All right. So if we look at the pressing arm lock, you can see again, the pivot or the attachment is up on the head. The effort here, because it's pressing, the effort, I know this arrow points up, but really we have to flip it upside down. The effort, the effort here is on the arms and it's pushing down on top of the elbow joint, and the legs here are securing the load. Does that make sense? So it's a pressing arm lock, and instead of pressing with your hip into the arm, you're pressing with your hands. You gable grip, right? Or this guy has them wrapped like this, and you're pulling in on top of that elbow joint, attempting to bend the elbow in a manner where it's not supposed to be bent. So what happens is we start looking through here, we start to see this pattern show up again and again. So we see the pivot or the connection point where the arm's secure. You see the effort is coming from underneath, right? So this dude in red, his elbow underneath his partner's elbow is starting to drive up and put upward pressure. And then his body up on top is securing the load. Your partner's body is always the load. That big mass is always the load, right? And we're attempting to move that mass with their arm like it's a lever, except we're strapping that mass into where it can't move even if it wanted to. And we start threatening the integrity of the lever, all right? Which is the whole point to get the tap. What happens when we start looking at these is we start seeing this pattern, and from this pattern, we could start kind of breaking down some general ideas of like, hey, in order for this to work, there's kind of 3 big things that keep popping up, right? If we're going to derive these down into some basic principles, how would we derive these down into some basic principles? And why is this even important? Like, why are we even using our body in this way? Because if I was strong enough, I could just take Jesse's arm and do this with it. Like just grab his shoulder and grab his wrist and just go like, ugh, and just start. And maybe if I was strong enough and I could get his arm secure, I might be able to break it that way. I might be able to get him to tap like that, right? It's not efficient. It's not super effective. It's not portable. I'll have a hard time teaching Jessica how to do it, right? Jessica, grab Casey, grab it, just break it in half. It's like, well, what if you're not strong enough? What if your grips aren't good enough? What if you can't secure them with just your hands, right? So what do? We start using technology to make it happen. And when I say technology, I don't mean computers. I mean using mechanical technology with our body to make it happen. all right? And there's and this is where we get into this idea, and this is all over in jiu-jitsu, even though it's not always talked about, understood, or made explicit. Jiu-jitsu is all about achieving mechanical advantage. So how can you use your body to maximize the effort you're putting in versus what you're getting out on the other end? That's mechanical advantage, right? So if we look at the classic mechanical advantage saying is this, right? I think it's Archimedes. It's not Archimedes. It's like Archimedes or something like that. Anyway, famous saying is, give me a place to stand, a lever long enough, I'll move the world. That's a first class lever, but it's okay. I'll show you the old world. I like how they use old world drawing of it too. Right? Super fulcrum, lever, world, getting moved. In other words, I'll break your arm if I get it right, right? So here we go. When we're talking about mechanical advantage, we're talking about how do we measure like the amplification of force that we get using a tool, but we're not using a tool, we're using a configuration of our body. So our body's the machine system here, all right? And how do we measure, or how do we gain an advantage in that, like, I'm putting effort into this, but using my body configuration, the output is much greater. I could apply the same effort by just grabbing and bending and doing this, but the output might be like only what I'm putting in. But if I harness my body right and I secure and I get things just right, now when I start putting effort into it, the output is actually amplified and greater, right? That's what we're talking about when we talk about mechanical advantage. So the machine system we're using is our body. It's just a way we're configuring our body into a simple machine, which is a lever. That's all we're doing, is turning our body into a lever. We use other simple machines all the time in jiu-jitsu, specifically the wedge. The wedge is used over and over and over again to lock our partner's body into specific positions that they can't move out of. Super, super common. The wedge is another example of a simple machine, all right? So this is important because when we understand this and we see the patterns, then we could break these down into some principles, all right? And that's what I want to give you guys. It's just like 4 kind of real basic ideas on what you need to do to make an arm lock work, almost regardless of the type of arm lock you're doing, or you know, what positioning you're doing it from, whether it's from turtle or closed guard or open guard, or someone's on top of you and you're on bottom side, whatever, you still have to have these principles the same, all right? So here they go. The principles are this: you always have to secure the lever or the limb in a manner that restricts rotational movement. So what I mean is this: the weird thing about the arm lever is that there's a bend in it, all right? Which is weird, okay? In and of itself, it wouldn't be a very effective lever in real life. If every time you move the lever bent like this, it'd be very hard to use it effectively. But because we understand it's a one direction joint, right? It bends one way, bends towards you, which I think, is that supine? Is that what that's called? I can't remember. Anyway, it bends towards you, right? So because the arm has a joint in it that bends, we have to be very careful how we let it rotate in the movement when we secure it. So if I secure it, but I allow my partner to rotate, then the angle where that joint is changes. And we know this when we're doing classic arm bars, because if Rocky can do this while I'm arm barring him, I won't be able to finish the arm bar. He'll move it and turn it. And every time I start applying force, he'll turn the arm bar in an opposite direction of the force, and I can't finish the arm bar, right? So when we secure the limb, we have to secure it in a manner that restricts the rotational movement of the limb itself, all right? So the limb can't rotate, all right? The second thing is we have to secure the limb, the end of the limb, it needs to be attached or secured before we apply force, all right? So like if I'm grabbing it like this and the arm is bent and I'm pulling and I'm trying to get an arm bar like this, it's not gonna happen. I need to take this arm, straighten out that lever, and then attach that to something else. Usually it's my chest. Like in the classic arm bar, it's the chest. I'm holding it onto my chest and securing the limb. So I'm restricting the rotational movement, with how I have it secured, but I'm also connecting it to my body the best that I can. Sometimes that connection is just on the way down. You put so much force on the joint, they tap before it ever even gets connected, but you need to try to secure that limb before you apply the force, all right? The end of the limb, right? The end. You need to secure the load. The load is your partner's body, all right? And depending on the kind of armbar you do, you can use your legs, you can use your body, or you can use your arm, right? It just depends, your arms. It just depends on how you're doing the armbar, but you have to secure the load. If you don't secure the load, like if you don't use your legs to trap your partner, they're going to sit up right out of that armbar. They'll move, all right? So once you get the limb secured and you're restricting the rotational movement and you secure the load, so the load's not going to shift and move, you can start applying force, generally with your hips, but sometimes it'll be with your arms, sometimes it'll be with your legs, to the joint, right? And we always want to apply pressure to the joint in the direction where there's no natural bend, which is the back of the elbow, right? Not in the front. We're not applying pressure this way, because if I apply pressure this way, the arm's going to bend in. That doesn't hurt, all right? And we're not attacking the shoulder, rotating up. We're trying to put pressure on the back side of the elbow where there's no natural bend in it. All right. So those 4 things become super important when you're hunting for arm locks. And you're like, I want to get this, I want to get that. Understanding I can't let the arm rotate. It has to be secure. The load has to be secured, and I have to apply force to the elbow joint. Once you kind of get those 4 things in sight, we usually don't have a problem applying force, right? Usually we get that. That's woo, we put the force in. Where we fall short is where we're applying the force, right? We put it on the wrong spot on the lever, and we fall short in that we generally don't do a good enough job securing the rotational movement of the limb, all right? So those are the 4 principles. And if we go back to these pictures and break them down, I can show you where the principles are, all right? So if we go back to video game armbar guy, my personal favorite, I love the look on his face. I feel like this is like probably 2010 MMA guy. He has kind of that look, MMA guys from 2010. But if we look, we can see some things that are happening. Okay, number 1 is this: secure the limb from rotational movement. This box that I have drawn around the knees, that's generally in this position. Your pinching of your knees together around the arm is what's restricting the massive movement or rotation, okay, of the joint. Number 2 is securing the end of the lever. We can see this takes place by grabbing the wrist, right? Keeping it secure. The elbows are keeping the rotation from happening. The load is being secured with the legs. You can see this box here, this little rectangle. So these legs are straddling over our partner's head and body and securing that load to where the load doesn't move or sit up. Because once the load moves or sits up, this angle, this pressure you're putting, the more I can move up towards it, the less pressure there is, all right? And then number 4, we're applying force to the joint of the elbow with our hip by driving up into it. So if you look at just this one basic example, you see these 4 principles come back into play. And if you start to violate these principles, like you don't secure the load, you don't restrict rotational movement, you don't apply force to the elbow joint, you don't secure the end of the lever, right? You can't finish the armbar. You can kind of get to the position, but you'll have trouble finishing it. If we drop this into the pressing arm lock example, again, we could break this one down into the same exact thing. Number 1, secure the limb from rotational movement. In this example, this guy's using his knees and his hands on the elbow itself to secure this from making rotational movement, all right? The end of the lever and the pressing arm locks they're tricky to teach people because you have to use your head and your shoulder to pinch. And you can see this guy's doing that to pinch your opponent's hand in place in order to secure the end of the lever and keep it in place. And then you roll that grip over it and it keeps that elbow joint from rotating too much. And now you have that whole lever secure, all right? The load is getting secured also with the legs here. So there's a pinch with the knees and the feet, and there's a pinch with the knee underneath here you could see as well. So this person's body sandwiched in between the legs, And then the top player, or the one applying the force, is applying force as well with the elbow. So, or with his hands. Not only are his two hands restricting movement, they're also pulling that elbow joint in. So they're applying the pressure from the top. But again, different style of armbar, different position for the armbar, same principles in play. All right. If we take a look at this last example, which is the straight armbar, it breaks down again into the same principles. All right. So the limb has to be secured so it can't rotate. In this example, the top player is using a Kimura grip to make that happen. All right. He's also securing the end of the lever with the top of the Kimura grip. You can see the left arm in this equation reaches under and grabs his own right wrist. All right. And you start to kind of see this idea of like your grip that you have on the end of the lever is important and also helping restrict rotational movement. All right. It's really important. You usually have to have a helper, which is your knees, or in this situation, the helper is the elbow and a little bit of the ground, which helps keep partner's arm from rotating too much. All right. And number 3, the load is being secured here with the top of our partner's body. We put a big rectangle box around it. So the player in red here, ooh, that's crazy. Someone drew on my screen. What the heck? Who did that? Oh, how dare you. So you can see the box here highlights where the load is being secured from the top player. So instead of using his legs, like in this example, the legs are securing the load. In the flip example, the top of the body securing the load, laying on top of the partner. And now this partner is wedged between the ground, this partner's body. And then the force that's being applied is coming from underneath. As that arm gets bent, this other arm's underneath, it's driving up into the elbow joint. If it was to slide down lower, you would lose the lock. If it got up too high, you could potentially lose the lock. Same 4 principles apply though, right? Secure the limb from rotational movement, secure the end of the lever, secure the load with your body or your legs or your arms, whatever you got to use, and then apply force to the joint. And if you can kind of conceptually put those 4 things in your brain, it should help you when you go to finish arm locks. And I want to show you some real dope arm locks real time here. One of them is a great break. Some of you guys will remember this. This is Tim Sylvia and Frank Mir. And you can see Sylvia's arm here is in the arm bar and it's about to get broken. It actually gets broken and Herb Deem stops. It breaks right there. So Frank Mir's on bottom. He's driving up with his hips, applying force that already broke the arm. His legs are securing Tim Sylvia's load, and he's gluing Tim Sylvia's wrist to his chest and keeping it from rotating. And even though Mir's legs aren't pinching super tight, I mean, he's got giant thighs, right? It's pretty tight there. He actually broke Tim Sylvia's arm in this match. One of my favorite arm bars of all time is Ronda Rousey. You can see she's putting tremendous torque on her partner's arm here. Again, she's securing the load with her legs. And in this example, she doesn't even have her right leg over her partner's face. She's got like the triangle, right? She's keeping rotational movement from happening. You see how she has her partner's grip and the hand is actually stuck inside of the elbow, inside of her right elbow. And then Rousey uses her left arm to grab her partner's wrist. It looks like she's actually might be even on the glove a little bit, and she's securing it to her body. She elevates her hip up to apply force. Same principles apply. Different arm bar, different position, same impact, same principles. All right. We're going to take this down now to, this is a belly down arm lock. Well, oh, I'm sorry. This was the pressing arm lock. This is a dope one, man. This is really nice. You can see that the bottom player, he starts to straighten the arm out. He's going to secure the wrist between his head and his shoulder. And then he's going to apply force with his 2 arms, right? Pulling down on the back of the elbow. And he secured the load here actually with his legs. It looks like a triangle configuration. That's a really nice one, man. That's a really nice. If I got that one in an MMA match, I probably would retire. I don't think I would fight or do jiu-jitsu anymore. That'd be it. I'd drop the mic and be like, I'm out. So that's a really nice one, real time. And the last one takes a little while to get into. It's the belly down one that Cerrone hit on Mike Perry. And this was a little choppy. I couldn't find a better GIF of this. I apologize. And it takes a second to set up, but we'll see it. So they get into a little battle here. Cerrone gets on the arm. He doesn't quite finish it. Right here, he's going to shoot his hip up, and you can see Perry's left arm is going to be in danger, and he kind of dangles it out there, and Cerrone's going to take it. He's going to end up going belly down in just a sec. There it is. So he just secured the load. Perry tries to slam him, and in the slam, he gets stuck. The load's secured here. What's interesting about the load here is that Mike Perry is trapped by the ground here, right? He actually needs the ground to get out of his way so he can move, but he can't because he's trapped belly down by the ground. The ground is keeping him in place. Cerrone attaches the lever to his wrist. He keeps it from rotating, and he applies the force with his hip line into the back of Mike Perry's elbow. We'll watch it one more time. It's going to come up right here. Watch, he swivels into that. Nice. So now, boom, Perry trying to slam him messed him up. Now Perry's stuck. He's stuck. Can't get out. Boom, gets the tap. I wish that one wasn't. So again, we're seeing these basic principles at work with the armbar, which is restrict the rotational movement, secure the lever, secure the load, apply the force. 4 things. 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom. That understanding those things are going to help you tremendously. So what I want you guys to think about when you drill your arm bars, when you're drilling, I want you to think about these principles. I want you to focus on like, hey, when I'm doing arm bars, am I really, when I practice, am I really securing the arm and not letting it rotate? Or am I just being sloppy? And like, what happens a lot of times in jiu-jitsu is we focus so much on the setups that we kind of forget about the core nuts and bolts of what makes the submission work. So we develop all these dope setups and entries, but then we lose our ability to actually get the finish. And we see that a lot in the leg lock game. A lot of people are getting into leg locks right now, but their finish rate isn't that high. They have these cool, awesome setups, but then once they get you into some position, you're able to slide your leg out. The very best leg lockers right now are the ones who are breaking limbs. They're actually threatening the break, and they will break they'll break your shit if you don't tap. Right? Those are the very best ones because they're paying super close attention to the actual principles of the leg lock. So when we're drilling arm bars, I want you guys to think about, how do I secure this arm and not let it rotate? How do I make sure I'm gripping on the end of the lever or near the end of the lever, right? To apply I want to be able to straighten that out so I can apply maximum force with my hip. And am I securing the load? Like if you can start identifying these as you're drilling them, it's going to tighten up your armbar game in and of itself. So when you have the opportunity to shoot into the armbar, the pain from being arm locked is swift and severe, and it's fast. And when you get a really good arm lock, the tap is like da 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 da, especially the straight arm locks, like da. They're like da, screaming taps, right? Not you have a bunch of time to tap. They're swift and they're sudden. But you have to be familiar with how to tighten it up on what you're doing. All right. So my advice is that arm bars are everywhere. I want you guys to look for them. They are prolific. They're accessible. They're adaptable. They're all over the place. And they are one of the hallmarks of being a good grappler is being able to apply an arm bar. And because you could get them from so many positions, when you have a good arm bar finish, then once you kind of master the finish and you understand the connection points, then the setups become important. And there's so many setups and there's so many entries, and it's like the weeds that grow outside there everywhere. That's how arm bars are, right? So I want you to start looking for them and identifying them. You should be able to practice all 3 types: classic arm bar, the pressing arm bar where you're using your hands, and then inverted arm bars. And then on top of that, there's straight arm locks, and there's the crucifix style where you're using your legs, but they all operate on the same principles. which leads me to like number 3, you should get really good at learning how to do arm bars with just your legs and with just your arms. All right. Because there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of guys who if you turtle up on them, they'll start that crucifix attack and they'll arm lock your arm with just their legs. Right. Or if you take their back and you're not paying attention to what you do with your arm, they'll arm lock you with just their arms. And there's also the arm lock where like somebody's behind you and you take their arm and pass it to the other side. Super crude. You pull down on it and apply pressure. Boom, boom, boom. You got that one too. So they're all over. And I want you guys, when you drill these, even if you're like practicing on a grappling dummy, like, or a partner, I have a little grappling dummy that I built. I want you guys to focus on perfecting the tightness of the arm bar and not the setup. Like, don't worry so much about the setup as much as you should be worrying about like keeping it tight and securing it. Does that make sense? Yay. All right. So I hope you guys have a renewed love and joy for arm locks. They're amazing techniques. They really are. And they're essential that you guys know how to do them. Hope you guys come away from this just a better understanding in general of the kinds of arm bars that exist and kind of mechanically how these arm bars are working. I'm hoping that exercising the intellectual aspect of this will help us as we drill, as we have opportunity to drill during this time. Then when we actually get back into class, I'm definitely going to be circling back to some of these ideas and pulling them into our physical classes so we can kind of put, right now I'm just planting seeds. I'm planting the seed. Okay. Here's some seeds. And now you guys got to water the seeds, right? So you got to drill them. You got to go back and reread through this stuff. You don't have to like study it for hours, but you got to put some water on it. If you just put the seed in the ground and walk away, it might not grow, right? So you got to put some water on it. You got to put a little time into it. And then when we get back into class, like now, then we're really going to be able to water these seeds and kind of see what's growing and what's coming out of them. Do you guys have any questions or anything? No? What's up, Pedro? Thank you for joining us, man. Good to see you. Well, I really appreciate it. I will put this, this is out on YouTube, so you guys can review it if you like. Please give me some feedback if you like this kind of thing. It's just a little bit of a break from like, hey, let's just do these or do those. Like Monday, Wednesday, Friday is more physical. I put the mats down, we're doing it. Tuesday, Thursday, maybe a little more intellectual, just to kind of feed that part of what we're doing as well. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Hey, it's good to see some of y'all. Take care.
Hell yeah. Thank you guys so much, man. I appreciate it. I'll be coming for
All
you.
right,
I'll be coming for you guys. Break some arms. All right, guys. Bye.
later.
Later.